Recording in progress.
Doesn't look like anyone's here.
Someone will pay for it.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to bring this meeting to order. Not that we're not in order already. This will be the Wednesday, October 11th meeting of the San Rafael Fire Commission. And we start at the top with a quick roll call. Stan, are you here? Yes, I am. David, are you here?
Present.
Tom, are you here?
Present.
Are you here? Are you here?
Yeah.
Yes, you are. The chief is here, and we have a guest. And I'll explain the guest in a moment. I'll explain the guest right now, and then we'll get to it in a moment. Early on, at the beginning of this change in ECCs for the city, there were a number of questions that came up relating to the Brown Act that we had at our table. So we had asked for some administrative guidance, and we're going to get some of that today from Genevieve Coyle, who is with the city attorney's office.
Yep.
And we'll get to you in just a moment, but first get some of our own business out of the way. We are open for public expression online. Do we have any evidence of anyone chiming in?
No participants.
Nobody. Okay, we will move forward. The minutes of our last meeting, September 13th, have been distributed. Trust everyone has had an opportunity to review them. Are there any omissions, corrections, changes? Do I hear a offer to approve? Motion to approve, a second from the floor anywhere?
I second it.
Second. Thank you, Ken. All right. They will stand as provided.
Well, no, you gotta take a vote.
All in favor?
Oh, this is true. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's enough to carry it. Majority. Thank you. Now, back to the Brown Act. And to set the stage briefly, for those of you who are all too familiar with the 14-page item, there are a new set of rules and regulations created for all of the boards, commissions, committees in the city of San Rafael. That's part of the presentation that we've already reviewed, kind of. In the body of that came references to the Brown Act. A document that's been around since, I believe, the mid-50s and is involved with all government agencies statewide. And the reason that we as a group, at least I singularly had some questions, was after reading it in detail, I realized that we were not complying necessarily with some of the rules and regulations the way they are presented. So it was felt that an explanation of same would make sense and be useful to us all. To that, the office of the city attorney. The floor is yours.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you for having me today. And I'm not only going to talk about the Brown Act, but I'm also going to touch briefly on the Public Records Act, which is also a related law related to public disclosure, as well as conflict of interest laws, just because those are really the big three that govern your work on the commission. I've got like a lot of slides. I cut a lot of them out. I'm trying to just leave this to maybe about 15 minutes and then, 15 minutes of questions or back and forth. So I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I just want to kind of hit the major points, and please just interrupt me and raise your hand or just shout out if you want to talk about anything as we're going through it. Okay, so the Brown Act is the state legislation that at its basis is that all legislative body meetings are open and they are public. This includes all regular meetings, which would be the meeting right now, any special emergency and more. You as a five-body member of the Fire Commission do constitute a legislative body under the Brown Act.
Stop you real quick. We have how many? 5 regular members? Because we always have alternates too.
Oh, and no,
So do the alternates count towards the majority?
they
Because they're not
would,
officially members.
they would if they're meeting. If they're.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you.
So what is a meeting? It's a gathering of the majority of the members of a legislative body at the same time and location. And then that's to hear, discuss, deliberate, or take action upon any item which is within your subject matter. Now, I want to get back to that question you just raised, because when I say alternate would count, an alternate would count if an alternate is actually, I don't know how your alternates function
We treat them as full members.
as full members. And if they're in a meeting, do they attend meetings and do they vote?
Yes, and yes.
And they vote.
No, they only vote if they're voting for an absent voting member. We have
Right,
5 voting positions.
Right.
We had 2 alternates. Currently, we have 1,
right.
and presumably it's going to stay that way unless I hear otherwise. So
So,
if one of the 5 is missing, then the
Yeah.
alternate
Yeah.
votes. That's the only
Yeah.
role.
so I want to make it clear that in your case, a majority is not 4 of the 6, it's actually 3, right? So it's going to be 3,
3 of the
even
5.
if 6 of you happen
Yeah.
to be meeting together. So I just want to make that clear. Okay, and it could be a meeting of 3 of you, which one of you is the alternate. That also constitutes a meeting of the legislative body.
Right.
Right. So in most cases, the meetings are pretty obvious, but there are some ones that are a little tricky. And these are the ones that can get, persons into trouble. These are called, what are called serial meetings. These are encompassed in the Brown Act, and they are, considered a violation if you engage in any of these kind of serial meetings. There's kind of 2 types. One is called the daisy chain. That's if this one member contacts another member of the legislative body, and that person contacts somebody else and you're discussing something specific. That is what's called a serial meeting. That can result in a violation of the Brown Act.
And that would be via email, texting, telephone,
Meeting in person.
hallway.
And the other form is what's called hub and spoke, where there's one person who then contacts the other members to try to get like collective concurrence on an issue that's going to be coming up before your commission, right? So you do want to look out for those. Email in particular is an area where that can happen, and it can happen unintentionally. So the best practice with emails is that you do not send emails to the whole body, so that between all 5 and 6 of you, that you're not sending emails among all of you, because when you reply to all, then you're engaging in a meeting, and depending on what you're discussing, if it's a matter before you or a matter that's within your authority, you could be violating the Brown Act. So what you should do with emails is always communicate through your staff liaison and not directly with each other.
Okay.
Okay. So that means when you're replying to emails, sorry, something just covered the screen. Be careful when you're replying. So do not communicate your position or make a commitment on a pending matter, and do not do a direct reply to the majority of the legislative body.
To clarify, our staff liaison is Chief White, correct?
Actually, our liaison is,
Lindsay?
Well,
It was Celeste, and
Celeste.
she's gonna be leaving to focus on her study, so it'll be me until we have a replacement. So all correspondence regarding the fire commission can
Goes to
be,
you, okay.
and if it needs to be elevated to Chief
Change
White
of the day.
or anyone else, I can forward it, but. And we blind copy all our emails, so you can just hit reply and it'll just send it to me only.
yeah, that's exactly why we blind copy all of you when we get emails from staff, because we don't want you to unintentionally reply all.
Makes sense.
Okay. Social media is another area. When you respond to postings that have shared content and it has, it's regards governmental business, and you're doing this with other members of the legislative body, that can constitute a Brown Act violation as well. I also want to just point out that use of social media to discuss governmental business is considered a public record. And it's considered a public forum under the First Amendment. And what that means is that the public then can reply and engage and comment. So the best practice, if you're using social media, is not using it in your official capacity as a fire commissioner, right? So you want to use social media in your personal capacities is perfectly fine, but it's best not to refer or use your title when you're engaging in that.
Right, question.
Mhm.
Social media, and then back up for part of my question would be emails as well. I guess texting falls in there somehow. Should, could, would company affiliations, three people at this table right now have email addresses that contain their company identification. And in some cases, that's a lot of information. They're using it because it's convenient. It's what they use every day in their business. But it's not technically them as a commissioner. Should they have standalone email addresses? Standalone identities apart from their business?
Let me get to, let me go straight, because you're asking it right here. Let me go to public records. So all of the city's public records must be disclosed to the public upon request. So a public record is any writing. It contains information related to the conduct of the public's business. It's prepared, used, or retained by any state or local agency, and it's regardless of the physical form or characteristic. This includes information contained on private phones, computers, and personal devices, and accounts of public employees. So what that means is that if you are using, whether it's your personal email account or a separate business account, and you're using it to engage in official business for the city, it is considered a public record and is disclosable under the PRA.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Kind of. I mean, what it really says to me, and I suspect they're hearing this, that can work. They can use those addresses, recognizing that it's opening a bigger door than the one they may anticipate.
Right, so if there was a PRA request,
Yeah.
you may be required to furnish those emails or other communications.
Specific, just specific emails or just email folders and files and histories and all this kind of.
So under the Public Records Act, it would really be the public records that are requested on any particular request. In theory, it could open everything up if it got into something where we're venturing into like litigation or something, and that's true.
I
in
doubt
any
would
kind of
ever be the
litigation
case,
Where
right.
somebody's using something, it, it potentially opens it up, but
Okay,
generally.
one last question about this, and then I'll leave you alone. Would it, this is only a reaction, not an official statement on your part of any kind. Would it make sense for the city to create web addresses for members of boards and committees and commissions, much as all of the employees have a city address? I mean, that's a huge undertaking electronically. It will cost a few bucks, I get that. But would that keep it clean?
So if commissioners were to use city addresses, then it would just be, yeah, part of the city's, it would already be in the city's custody.
Sure.
In which case you just, it would already be available to the city, just like an employee. So you're absolutely right. Whether the city can or kind of should do that, I don't know, but I'm certainly happy to bring it back to the city manager and city clerk's office for them to, consider.
I'd be curious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Genevieve, so I have a question that kind of ties in with that. The last sentence, the last word says public employee. I am not an employee of the city of San Rafael. I am a volunteer for the city of San Rafael. To me, it's like I'm coming under the umbrella of an employee, but there's no compensation. This is strictly volunteer work.
So this says includes information. This is not complete. It would include the officials. So you're a public official.
Okay.
Overall.
Thank you.
So let's go back to hit on, okay, so we left off on social media and then individual meetings. Okay, so individual meetings are okay, right? So we talked about how the Brown Act is any meeting of a majority of the members. So that does not mean that as a city official, you can't engage in separate conversations and communications outside of a meeting. You can answer questions, provide information. And so long as you are not communicating with other members of the legislative body, and any other members, those types of meetings are perfectly fine. I'm not sure how often you and your roles are meeting with constituents, but if you were meeting with a constituent on a matter that's under your jurisdiction, it's always best to say you're here to listen, and that you won't be making any decisions or recommendations until after a public meeting, and that it just ensures that you're not, that all of your engagement on matters within your jurisdiction are always being discussed in a public forum.
That's why you see people say that often
Mhm.
when they come into meetings. I'm just here to listen.
So to clarify, you're saying that if I have a conversation with Ken, just the two of us, that
You're fine.
pertains to the commission, it's fine. It's only if it becomes three or more that it comes under the umbrella of a meeting.
That's right, but you do want to be careful then that you don't have another conversation of the
Oh,
same
then
type
Ken
with
talks
somebody
to
else. because
David.
then it's
Yeah,
gonna
yeah,
be-
yeah.
Then you're getting,
I told you not
so-
to do that.
So in general, the best practice is not even to do it one-on-one, really. To be honest, the best practice is between all of you. That you're not discussing official matters unless you're sitting here in the meeting. That's publicly agenda.
But I have one question on that. So Tom and I are working with Captain Berkey about doing a ride-along. I doubt we'll be talking about commission business on that, but it's an official, it's a ride-along with the crew. Any
So those
reasons why we shouldn't do that together?
No, those kind of questions are okay, and I should just clarify too. There are, I don't know if you have subcommittees, but the city council has subcommittees, and those are where two city council members are meeting regularly on a specific topic. So I'm not saying that you can't do that if there were two people meeting on a specific subject, but usually it's there's a formality around it, like the city has an official committee in order to be having those conversations, because some of those need to be Brown Act notice depending on what they're talking about and how long the committee stays in existence. So it's really just more of a best practice not to do it. In the case of a ride along, if you're just going on a ride along, like sort of any member of the public,
Mhm.
and you're not sort of engaging in any kind of discussions within the subject matter of this committee, that's not a Brown Act meeting.
Hmm.
And events, things like that, your attendance at events, there's some other exceptions I'm trying to think of, but, educational, if you went to conferences together, those are excluded, so there's things of that nature that aren't considered a Brown Act
Okay.
Can
meeting.
you, on your hub and spoke example, or even your daisy chain example, if Thomas is in the chain, or he's the hub, then is it a Brown Act issue? Because he's not a commissioner?
Right, so Thomas, that's correct. Thomas is okay because he is a staff person, so he can reach out to each of you. But he's not going to say, hey, Tom, guess what Ken decided, he thinks of this issue in the
Right.
following way, what do you think, right? That's not what he's doing,
Okay.
right? So of course, Thomas or Chief White or anybody else in the fire department may be reaching out individually, and that's just that's how we can get our business done at the city. But he's not going to be doing it in a way that then he becomes, like you said, the hub. So I wanna just make sure, okay, so we talked about individual meetings, so non-agendized items, okay, so also, your meeting agenda, has specific items on it. The general rule is that you cannot discuss or take action on any item that does not appear on that agenda that's already been publicly noticed. There's a few exceptions to that. You can briefly respond to public statements, questions, or questions. You can ask questions for clarification. You can make a brief announcement, like updates, what's going on, making brief announcements, or reports on your activities, referencing, provide references to staff and other sources for factual information. So if you got, for example, a public comment on an issue that's not on your agenda, you can say, Thomas was working on this particular information, on this particular issue, and we're happy to connect you with him for, more information.
Question.
Mhm.
On our agenda, and I asked early on for this to be added on a regular basis. Item number 5 is called current media coverage. That's just a general catch-all.
Mhm.
And the reason I ask for that is to allow for items to be brought to the table that are outside the 72-hour window. This would be an example. This is today's newspaper.
Yeah.
We didn't know about this 72 hours ago. But it's a subject that we should be talking about. How does this work?
So is that item on your agenda or not? But here's
Specifically?
no, the media one.
Yes.
It is on there.
Yeah.
So you could make a factual announcement that is on the newspaper.
I would at the meeting.
Sorry?
I would at the meeting.
Yeah, at the meeting, yeah,
Yes.
like right now, you
Yeah.
could say that, but you could also, you cannot discuss it in detail or like the sort of the policy or anything behind it. What you could do is say, this is on the newspaper today, would like to add this to a future agenda item. And then you can talk about it in detail the next time. I do not advise taking up new matters just because they happen to be posted on. the
Even though we may have people in the room who shall remain nameless for the moment, who could react in an immediate sense of the position of the department. Or do we want to postpone that a month?
Help me
Say,
understand.
next month, we want to talk about this.
And next month, that item coincidentally would be in my report, but it happened this past weekend. The
Yeah.
report they got was submitted to them last week prior to the activity that he's referring to.
So I guess I'm not, I'm trying to answer a question, but I'm not exactly clear.
We tend to talk about current events in the news
Okay,
and how they relate to the fire service.
Yeah.
But that isn't necessarily on the agenda specifically.
But I think what we're gonna happen, what I'm hearing is that if it happens within that 72-hour window, you gotta take it a month, right? And so if that article came out a week ago.
Yeah.
And maybe we submit it to Thomas.
Right.
He gets it on the agenda.
Sure.
And we have an agenda item for Girls Fired Up or whatever.
Okay.
that's
I mean,
right.
if that's the way it's gotta be,
It's
it's the way it's gotta be. but-
unfortunate. It's unfortunate. I mean, if you ask me, my personal
Mhm.
opinion, it's not a good way to do business, but it's what the Brown Act is. And there is a
Okay.
72-hour cutoff. The only items that you can have any substantive conversation about that's not on an agenda is anything that's truly an emergency.
Okay.
that Comes up. within
Well,
72
that's why
hours.
you're here.
So maybe we funnel our news articles, we email them independently to Thomas.
Absolutely. Sure.
Cause I had a couple,
Yeah, okay.
I want to
All
share.
right. Thank you.
Great, okay, so we did public records. And then that's the Brown Act, and then I have a few the slides here on conflicts of interest. So this is the Political Reform Act, which in essence says that when you're acting in your official capacities on the Fire Commission, that you're putting public duty above your own personal interests, and that you owe a paramount loyalty to the public. So I just want to go over sort of the underlying rule here, and that is that as a public official, you cannot make, participate, or influence a governmental decision that will have a foreseeable and material financial effect on your economic interests. So what is foreseeable and material? So for sources of income, that's any source of income of $500 or more during the prior 12 months for you, your spouse, or your domestic partner. And then where it comes into business, interests. So that's any business entity in which you are a director, officer, partner, trustee, manager, or employee, or a business entity in which you have a direct or indirect investment of $2,000 or more. So what this is really saying is that if there's something on your agenda item that you are voting on, that you're deliberating on, and it potentially can affect one of these business interests, then you have a duty to disqualify yourself from that item and not engage or vote on it. Real property.
I have a question.
Yep.
So I work for a large commercial insurance brokerage,
Yep.
global brokerage firm, and we have this thing called FARA. It's for fire agency insurance. We insure fire departments in the Western United States. So if I grab something I see something really cool and I want to share that to ultimately give it to him. And he's looking at that and he goes, wow, these guys have a really great program for workers' compensation and safety. I can't really do that, right? Or is there any problem with that?
As long as you're not being compensated.
I'm not being compensated, but he may say, wow, our fire department would benefit from going to Gallagher for our workers' compensation. That's a bad way to go, right?
Yeah, so Gallagher is the company you're working for, is what
Yeah.
you're saying? Yeah, so what you need to be careful of is not using your business interest in order to get an advantage.
Right.
Right. It would be especially problematic if, for example, there was a consideration of a contract with your company.
But if I just want to give him something like, hey, here's a really slick way that LA and San Diego are handling, it's a new technique they're using. I can give that to him.
Yeah, I
So-
think that if you're doing it more as just sort of a, giving him the information without the intent of sort of
Right.
as a business, that you're furthering a business interest, it would be okay. I think it's kind of like, I always think of it as front page of the newspaper. Is this something that you want on, the front page of the newspaper, if anybody ever found out about it, right? Like, does it look like it could be?
Nefarious or
Right,
doing
right.
double dealing. No.
Right.
Yeah, okay, got it.
But certainly when it comes to what you guys are doing on in your official capacities here in public meetings and your deliberations or decisions, these materiality standards are minimum and absolute disqualification requirements. Real property. So if you own any real property, own or lease any real property that is within a certain distance of the location that you are making a decision on, then there is a presumption of a conflict, and you need to disqualify yourself. So kind of just like an example is, this comes up a lot, like with the planning commission and the city council, where if the planning commission is making a decision on a development and they own a property, in the vicinity, they have to disqualify themselves. In your case, I'm maybe it could be something like, you guys are gonna be recommending that a certain fire station gets certain funding for upgrades or rehabilitation. And, you might be, you might live across the street, that would be a case where you would have to disqualify yourself.
Yes.
So I'm not sure that comes up a lot in your,
Not in our
in
purview.
your purview, but that could be like a situation.
That's not us.
And then, why these are, okay. And then there's also just a couple of exceptions to this. One is if the topic impacts the public generally, and also you're actually legally required to participate, and you may have to. Legally required participate may occur if you don't have a quorum for a vote. Sometimes we have to have, otherwise we couldn't get a vote on an issue.
If we don't have a quorum, we don't meet.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I mean, if a commissioner had to disqualify themselves because of one of these rules, and in order to get the
I see.
quorum, you
Okay.
need the third
Got
vote.
it.
In those cases, you can't disqualify yourself. What happens if you're disqualified? You have to identify what the interest is, what the conflict of interest is. You have to step down. In the city council, they do it from the dais, they leave the room. They refrain from any discussion or participation until the matter is resolved, is voted on, and then they can come back into the room. And that's it. So those are my slides for today, and happy to. Thank you.
Yeah,
Any questions?
Great. I meant to send a couple of briefers for you, that I intended to send before this, and I forgot, so I'll send them to you, Thomas, and then you can distribute them out there. There's just like a 2-page little brown act. A conflict that it's the UPC rules, so just, I'm always available for questions, and happy to meet you all.
Anybody?
Great,
No? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
Welcome to stay, or you can beat the traffic.
Thank you.
All right, continuing on our agenda for the day, next up would be Fire Foundation. Donna?
I gave you an
Yes, we do.
article that came from the foundation. I don't think you need me to read it to you. Any questions on that information that was distributed?
No, I will, oh, yes, if I were to say to myself, Stan, get your name on a list, I should contact you or
To volunteer.
before the event.
You could go direct
I'm
to-
in the crab thing right now, I'm sorry, I didn't even make it clear.
Yeah, so you could either email me or go direct to Len Thompson,
Okay,
because I submitted the names that were given to me from the last meeting.
Good.
The only thing I'm disappointed to tell you is you had asked me to provide a list of who has been contacted in regards to donations, so that we don't double ask. Never got it. I don't know what the problem is with the foundation. I'm really disappointed, to be quite honest, but I'm not getting any information back to share with you to solicit donations.
Is that an item I can speak to briefly?
How, I think you might.
Okay. Given the departure of Captain DeLambert, I think there was heavy reliance on him to go out and do a lot of this work in previous crab feeds, from what I understand. So I've taken it upon myself to go out and start kind of beating the streets a little bit, trying to see what I could drum up. Some success so far. I've got the Diamond Sports around the corner willing to contribute something for the silent auction. Went to San Rafael Lumber and Supply. They actually bought 5 crab feed tickets as opposed to donating an item for the silent auction. I went to Jackson's Hardware. They said to come back around this time of the month, because when I went was in July, I believe. So since we're closer, I think I'll have more success at that point. Going to, again, some of these locations that have already been accessed in the past. Went to the golf shop. They came up with some donations as well, so we got gift cards from them.
The chief,
Got some other,
the question at hand was, a spreadsheet was created at the last feed
right,
with all the people that donated, their name, their contact information. It's vanished. I
So-
provided it to the president at that time.
okay,
and it hasn't ever resurfaced. And I'm like, what happened? Because it's reinventing the wheel that we're having to figure out who should we even go to, who was,
There was a list that I saw recently that spoke to donations that came forward from, Andy's Market, Safeway, Smart and Final, you name it, a wide variety of those, different folks that have items for either to support the craft feed and the meals themselves, or the associated materials, or to support the silent auction component. I don't know, the list that you shared is the one I saw. It sounds like it may be a bit different.
like it.
But there is a attempt at summarizing who had been contributors in the past. And so I don't know if you still have that list. If you do, I'm more than happy to share it back with the foundation. I meet with them
Jack
a week
Devlin,
from
I
Friday.
gave it to Jack
Okay,
electronically,
okay.
Excel spreadsheet.
But you sent
But
it,
since
right?
you,
Well, but that was 4 years ago. We haven't done it for
So-
4 years, and I didn't,
Oh, yeah.
unfortunately, I didn't keep a copy, and that was just the work that I did.
so,
You don't have to, if you go into your emails, you can do
Yeah,
this.
they've dumped all that from 4 years ago.
You did it from your work email.
I don't know if I can. Anyways, it was a master list because I was only one of several individuals. Jack was at the helm of that drive. Jeff Kramer, I know, worked it, I worked it, Jack worked it. And so there should have been a master list.
and I think that's where probably Jack's reference in memory is what's helping to repopulate the list, is my guess. There were vintners, there were folks that did a wide variety of individuals, but what I can recall, maybe at least a list of 25 to 30 folks, maybe at minimum. And that's how I started making some of my rounds based on that information I had. And then I just decided to go up and down the street, because there were some areas that didn't, you know, I
Right.
just looked at this business and said, well, you know what, you mind if I put a flyer up here, or can I entice you to support us with a donation, as an example? And so just depended on the vibe I got when I went into that establishment,
So
so.
that's my advice to the commission. I decided, you know what? I'm not hearing anything. I'm just gonna go out and shake the trees. And I was seeing before the meeting started briefly, it's amazing what that little card that says your fire commissioner does. Boom, you've got their attention.
Well, otherwise you could be.
Exactly. Well, and I do wear my fire hat, shirt,
Right,
and key fob. I mean, I look like I really am who I say I am. But if you present your card, boy, you got their attention. So I would tell you, if there's somebody that you think could make a great contribution, go ask. Don't worry about a double ask, because I don't think it's happening. I think you and I are probably the only
I
ones that
wouldn't
are out
worry
there
about a
asking.
double ask at this point, and
Yeah.
if there's a double ask, maybe it's a added reason for them to be compelled to share. I went to video only. The first guy I spoke to didn't really seem so inclined. The next one I spoke to, my next visit, said, yeah, I'm sure we can come up with something for you, whether it's a percentage off coupon or something, so. So I'm taking note, but I'm also circling back just in case, so.
I think there's a list of some people who have, or businesses that have already contributed, right, at the
Yeah,
bottom.
but that's actually contributing goods. Salad, bread.
But they've already been.
I'm
hit
talking
up,
about
is what I'm
stuff in
saying.
the silent auction.
Yeah,
So these were all businesses.
We want that cabinet Tahoe, you guys.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's a cabinet,
That's the kind
I
of stuff
wish.
that brings in the high dollars.
yeah.
Or tickets to 49er game, or tickets to, I mean, the stuff that can really bring,
I've got a Steph Curry jersey that's framed that I'm donating to the place. Yeah, so.
there you
And
go.
I think someone else had another NFL item, I think, or another NBA item, so it's starting to come together, but it's really
Is it signed by
not
Curry?
enough, it is.
What are you donating there?
I've got two, I've actually got three. One I gave to my son, the other two I had framed, I'm like, which one do I, keep, the white frame or the black frame? I got the white frame, I'm donating the black frame. So,
Very good.
Yeah,
Sidelight, I just saw it today, he's got a new commercial, he's in it. And he's trying to indicate that the number 30, wherever it's used, means him.
somehow,
Yeah, so the basis is this product, whatever it is, and this guy is walking by and he stops and turns and Curry rushes over and says, "You want a signature?" Sure. So he does this whole thing about the commercial down the face of the shirt. And 30 in his name and everything like that. And the guy looks at it and goes, This was a new shirt.
Yeah.
Andy Borgia.
Wow.
You gotta see it.
I haven't seen that.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
No, that shirt alone is gonna be worth.
So given that, I can circle back and find out if Mr. Devlin is able to pull that and find that email. But again, I think they're trying to piece it back together. It just may not be as comprehensive as what you shared. So anyone that wants to go out and support our effort to try to solicit donations and or purchases of craft feed tickets, obviously would be greatly helpful. I have actually tickets here in the office right now, about 15 left out of the 20 I was provided, and I'm hoping I can get through those other 15 before the next Friday's meeting, so I can ask Chief Thompson for some more tickets and hopefully go back out and be successful with those, but we'll see. Yeah,
So Lynn Thompson has the actual physical ticket.
yes.
There you have it if you need tickets.
Hmm.
That information's not trickling down.
Okay. Yeah, I'll make sure we do something about that then.
And then I would say, given that the craft feed is the foundation's biggest fundraiser, it would be wonderful if someone took charge, not Jack. Jack's trying to step away. To be in charge of the silent auction in totality and keep and maintain that list. So we don't have to go through this again next year.
Yeah, there's a void there as well. I've reached out to staff to see whether or not we had anyone who may be skilled and or able to operate that mechanism, that system. And so far I haven't gotten anyone. That being said, it might be something we have to actually, at some point look for an individual who's compensated to do it, as opposed to the coalition of the able or willing within the Commissioner Foundation. It's just,
Yeah,
well, I hear it's a bit more than just a spreadsheet. There's also a tracking mechanism, there's a payment mechanism, there's a assigning who purchased what, did you collect the revenue, how much was it? So there's a little more than
Break it
just
into-
giving a tab or a ticket to someone who put their hand up at an auction, I think, so.
There's a lot more to it, but I think what we're talking about are two different things. The actual list of who we're gonna go ask for donations, that's one task.
right.
The other task is actually running the auction.
Yeah. And that's what you were just asking about. am I
No, we're
correct?
talking about the list of.
Prospect list.
Thank you.
Oh, I misunderstood. I thought you were referring to someone that was gonna actually step up and take care of
It
the
morphs
process.
into your,
Well,
yeah,
there's
yeah.
two
Two needs.
Right.
jobs
Yeah.
there.
I'm more than happy to keep possession of any list that comes forward that we think is comprehensive and we put it in our own archives or
Cool.
repository of sorts.
I
So
can
that this
generate a
information
list of
gets
every
passed down.
business. List of every business in San Rafael.
No, but what we're saying is people that have given in the past generously, that's the
Yeah,
people
no,
that we
yeah.
wanna keep close.
Does anybody know? Is there any collective knowledge? If you look at the list and go, oh, yeah. This guy, this guy.
I know who I'm going to ask next.
So there's no intellectual property that we
Steve.
have to.
Yeah,
add to it.
Steve would,
Probably.
probably Larry.
He saved everything that wasn't nailed down, so I'll ask him. See if how close, I know he's close to the foundation. We'll see. Dr. Misery. Any further foundation? No, thank you. Any questions? I think we've heard them. Okay, well, to the very brief current media. Next month, we should be talking about this. Basically, in a nutshell, it was a 2-day class for young women who have an interest in firefighting and paramedic careers. Was held in Nevada. And it's in the paper and online if people want to read ahead for our discussion next month. To the email I sent you, if you want to hand it here, let me steal it back. Another item came up in the press. I'll give this to Tom, so I'll send you another copy. The wildfires in Maui. The headline says it, and we'll put this one away. The father of a woman who died in the Maui wildfires a lawsuit against 3 major landholders on the island, alleging the dry grasses left to grow wild on their properties fueled the deadly blaze. All sorts of insurance overtones in something like that, and some of these were publicly held properties. I wasn't gonna get into it with her while she was here, but where would the city be if Boyd Park burned down and somebody was killed or injured, and then they went to sued the city because the city owned the park? Hello, who's in charge?
You know, it becomes a question of, is this considered a act of God or
Act of
a
God.
negligent situation? So I'm not quite sure how to answer that, depending on.
No, I know that.
circumstances, I believe, but
Oh, I get that.
Yeah.
But it just, it's, and I saw it said to you, because I thought with your legal mind, you'd look at that and kind of
I'll
go,
look at that.
can of worms here and can
I'm
of
already
worms
thinking
there.
about it.
But it's like, hello? Anyway, we get to talk about that next month, apparently. Moving, are there any other current media information, or you had something you wanted to,
I'll share it for next month.
you want to address it now so we can make it official?
No, I'll send it,
Oh,
Thomas, I'll send it
sure,
to you and then we
absolutely.
can send it out in advance for people with free read.
Okay. Commission member reports.
What is the scope of a commission members report?
Well, there you are.
That's a rather ambiguous agenda topic.
I think what we do is continue the way we have for the last 400 years. and
Yeah,
somebody
well,
tells
we-
us it's wrong. I
Oh,
know.
we're being recorded. I won't say.
I know.
When we're off recording,
Right,
we'll have a conversation. Okay, yeah, I'm good with that.
write it in the sand at the beach, so it goes away in the next wave.
Mm,
David,
So a couple of things, I continue to work with Phil on staff about our social media plans and trying to increase public awareness around fire safety, and fire information in general. So I've been traveling the past couple of weeks, so I need to catch up with Phil. Probably will do so within the next 2 weeks. Like I mentioned, Captain Berkey responded very quickly once I got his email correct about doing ride-alongs. So I think we've gotten the okay from Genevieve for
Right.
Tom and I to do one, and then if you want to do one at one point, or you do want to do one together, I'm sure he'd be willing to do that as well. So. And then the final thing related to foundation and crab feed. So I've been in touch with Jack. I did a little bit of work on the website. I don't know a lot about website development, but I was able to clean up a few things on there. And I think you had mentioned at the last commission meeting that the link wasn't working to buy tickets.
Yeah, from my phone, it wasn't.
Can you try it again? Because I checked it out a couple of weeks ago and
Okay.
it seemed like it was functioning.
Okay, all right.
And Jack said that people are buying tickets
Okay,
through
cool.
that, so.
I was an early adopter, maybe.
Yeah, who knows, so I'm gonna continue to work with Jack and Len on just the website in general, and then I'm gonna start kicking into high gear the promotion for the grad feed, so getting in the calendar listings of some of the local news media. And then we're also gonna work to get it in Nextdoor and a few other things to really try and pump it up now that we're getting closer to the date. I think people will start thinking about things. A month ago was probably a little too early. But now that we're 2 months away from it, I think it's a good time. And then, yeah, I'll look into the banner, but I think Bob Sinnott was looking into, can we find the banner, right? And there was one that was previously made, and they got
Yeah.
maybe in the move or.
Yeah, so
something.
the last I heard is it was located in temporary 51 across the street before everyone reoccupied the PSC, and no one seemed to know it. The company officers that were there, all the crew members that were there that were assigned there, don't recall. Chief Center went down to 519 4th Street to take a look in there to see whether or not there was, the possibility was stored over there. It wasn't brought over here to the Public Safety Center. We've been through pretty much every area we thought it would.
hiding in the mezzanine.
Unfortunately. So, really unfortunate. I understand that was a pretty pricey banner that extended all the way across the street.
Yeah.
I can only imagine what something like that might cost again now, but probably better to do it sooner than later so that we don't find ourselves spending triple or quadruple that amount in a couple of years, so. Don't know where it could have went. They reached out to Captain DeLambert to see if he had any ideas on it. He said he did, so,
Okay,
you know.
all right.
A little late for this year, but maybe we can find a banner manufacturer that would like to donate one.
Yeah. I think so. I didn't get the sense from Jack that you wanted to deploy budget to create a new banner.
I would say that would be correct. That was my impression, that they didn't feel that the banner was essential to driving business. Do you know how many tables are actually at the community center? There's only been 2 sold.
Yeah, I understand there were at least 10 they were trying to fill,
Okay.
so. 2 sold, 2 full ones sold, and maybe another half table. But, and I think the 5 tickets I sold went to one individual in the San Rafael Lumber Supply, so I don't know if they're gonna carve that out as a half table with another group of a half table and make a full table. So we still have several tickets to sell as of at least a week and a half ago when I met with, Mr. Devlin and Chief Thompson, so.
And I will say, I approached an individual who had donated in the past. I mean, it was just like, yeah, sure, $500, boom. I didn't ask for tickets. I just figured it'll all go towards the crab feed, whether or not somebody's in a seat doesn't really, she didn't want to attend, she just wanted to donate.
Right,
So that works too.
yeah.
Don't be shy, people ask.
Yeah, I hear PD may have already agreed to purchase a table like they've done in the past to the San Rafael Police Officers Association, so,
Oh,
yeah.
that's it.
Ken?
I meant to bring something with me, but, I didn't have a chance to bring it out today. The last, meeting, I suggested to you guys that. And Chief and I had a conversation a long time ago about this, the insurance industry is making money.
Mhm.
And when people make money, like London is now. It attracts, people go, oh, I can make money at that now, and it was shortly after that, like 3 days later after our last meeting, where they announced, the Department of Insurance announced, hey, we struck a deal with these insurance companies, Travelers, AIG, Safeco, Nationwide, that they will be more reasonable in their rate increases that they'll allow. And so those guys said, oh yeah, all of a sudden we found a common ground with the Department of Insurance. We're gonna start coming back in the state of California. So I'll get those articles over to Thomas to share with you guys. But it's just the way that
Yeah,
the insurance
Evan
industry,
Blow.
pack mentality. But I have to hand, the chief called it a little while ago, said, there's so much money that these people are making because you see it.
Yeah.
And we're having a very, very good wildfire season, and we had a good hurricane season.
Yeah, I sat in on a seminar. I won't be able to speak to that in this report, but I sat in on a seminar yesterday. Day before yesterday with Assemblyman Damon Connolly and other insurance industry executives, our own executive director, Mark Brown from the MWPA, Dave Winokur, fire chief from Moraga Renda, and several other individuals from United Policyholders, you name it, that all weighed in on insurance and wildfire risk. So it was interesting to hear the different positions. Somebody would debate with you quickly who was from the insurance industry that, you know, the insurance industry isn't making any money. Somebody else pointed out the idea that Florida has bigger claims in California. So what's the real story here? But yeah. Folks have been steered towards the California Fair Plan, I guess, and now they're trying to make sure that, you know, even if they're getting steered there, they're not paying 5 to 10 times what they were paying before. But again, more information to follow on that, but I'm glad to hear there's some hope and some light at the end of the tunnel here. Yeah.
Well, specifically, I mean, if you look at those other natural disasters, whether it's a cyclone or a convex storm or hail, I just came from Texas last week, and hail's the big issue there, or hurricane. You can't control those. Those are natural disasters that are driving rate. Wildfire, because of the efforts made by humans, it can be controlled to a certain degree. You know,
The risk can be minimized. Absolutely. Yes.
in the urban wildfire interface, right? And you guys have done it. If you look at the modeling that Firewise if you go back, 3 years, 2 years, 1 year, you can see that the brush zone has just moved away from downtown Santa Fe. If you pick this building as your pin, which I've done, you see the dramatic change.
Well, that was the hope that, we would be able to get with legislators and others to compel the insurance industry to see the effort that's being put forward by the individuals and the entities collectively. And help look at this. This is drastically changing and will for years to come. Why are we being penalized? In fact, maybe we should be rewarded, just on the opposite end. So, but we'll see. Time will tell.
Okay, please, thanks.
All right. Alice?
Nothing.
None? Okay. Nor do I, other than to thank Genevieve for coming and clarifying for us. Chief White, table is yours.
Hold on one
Yes.
second. I do have something I'd like to ask about. I was contacted by Lindsay to submit a request to be looked at to be a voting member of this group. Whereas currently I'm an alternate. I haven't heard word one about if I have to do an interview or when the decision's gonna be made. I wanted to also share with all of you that I did refer a former firefighter, retired firefighter from the city of San Francisco, John Chung. He also submitted an application to be a fire commissioner. I thought it would be really cool for us to have a retired firefighter on the commission. I just feel like that would bring another dimension to the work that we do here. And the other issue that I have is, I think that we should have 2 alternates versus 1, because you'll be terming out in the near future. So why not bring 2 people in, get them up and running, intimate with the work that we do, so we don't have to go through the whole search and seek yet again. Now, I realize we might not get 2 qualified applicants that want to be alternates, but I think that a notion of returning back to 2 alternates is a good thing.
In the past, the city council has not automatically elevated the alternate to the open seat. Sometimes they left the alternate as the alternate and appointed somebody new. The number of alternates varies at the city council's whim. So you could have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think I've been in here where we've had 2 or 3. It's just if they have a good candidate and there's no opening, they'll just make you an alternate, and then there you sit until they decide. So you have to apply for the opening,
So
but
that's
you're not guaranteed the opening.
understood. I also am wondering, as an alternate, does the clock start on
No.
me?
No.
So it's
You have
not
no
until I'm a formal official member that window of term starts.
Correct.
Okay,
Because I was an alternate for a while. I've been on this for 10+ years.
because you
But I
were
was
an
an
alternate,
alternate.
you didn't term out
Right.
as fast. Okay,
Right.
Me too. 6 years.
now you're on the clock.
I term out next October.
Yeah, it's coming up.
Yeah, you'll blink and it'll be next year. Yeah. So, in any event, so I'm glad. John's great.
Yeah, you're
I highly recommend
middle,
it.
you're at the end of next year.
Yeah.
Chief?
Thank you. Just sending Lindsay a question right now.
Did you
Please,
interview when
set the
when you
opposite.
moved, so they interviewed you again?
Which so that you'll know off the
Yeah.
record, and not that it's off the record.
And
I'm,
Even
as
to be
far
an
as I
alternate,
know,
you
I
interview.
am the only.
Well, to be an alternate, I interviewed, but I didn't think they'd want to interview me again, and you're
No,
saying
they
that.
interview every time.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Alternate.
So even when you come to re-up,
Always one.
they interview you again.
Yeah.
And-
What is it?
and I
We
was-
were Jerry. We
Same
we were back to back.
Steve,
right?
that's
Yeah.
Jerry
Who
and
are they gonna pick, me or Steve?
So you'll be interviewed every single time.
So they picked.
Okay.
Maybe it's a law.
Steve,
Right.
that was a no-brainer.
Right, okay.
But my presentation was such that they wanted me on board. So the council at that meeting said, the rules say we have 1 alternate, but there are no rules that say we don't have 2.
Okay,
All right?
there's a response. That's great to hear.
Well, that, I have no news that I was being interviewed on Monday.
Okay,
News to me.
so
You're being interviewed on Monday?
Yeah, I didn't even know. Or I would not show up for the interview.
No one told you?
Nope.
So,
That's terrible. Well, I'm glad you're being interviewed.
Yeah, and I won't be here in town, so it better be Zoom or it won't happen. You guys will just lose me.
No, you gotta stay on. They'll reschedule, I think, if you can't make it.
we'll see what Lindsay's able to do. She did respond quickly, even though she's out of the office today, so that's great.
Yeah,
But
and I'm wondering if John was ever notified. I'm like,
Was it advertised? Usually there's a
It
blurb
should
in the
have
paper and.
I
You go to
mean,
the
it has to be,
Yeah.
it has to be. I've been looking, but I haven't seen it.
well, I'm glad you asked.
You know, so.
Thank you.
oh, you're welcome. So I'm gonna try to power through this. I think some of this you guys have already discussed and landed on a little bit. The Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority did an evacuation assessment throughout the entire county. I was a little disappointed at some of the map detail that I didn't see. But there was some helpful information in there, and I put them into bullet points, so summarize those. A lot of enhancements surrounding evacuation planning around temporary staging locations and places where people might have safe refuge. Some considerations on evacuation, depending on, you know, the weather that's being forecasted, the current conditions that are encountered at the point of the emergency. Additional planning centered around the time of day. You know, are there schools in the area, or is this a time of day where there's expected a lot of traffic congestion, such as 4, 5, 6 p.m. when people are getting off work and heading out of town or coming back in town. Additional things that were factored in include nighttime alert notifications and/or how do people safely evacuate, you know, at 2 a.m. when they're groggy and just now getting the word that, you know, there's a need to evacuate. And so what was interesting though is that there's an assembly bill that actually expects or mandates, requires that local jurisdictions identify their capability and the safest ways for them to actually be able to identify routes of evacuation. And so that was a little bit surprising in that, you know, some of this information can be found in the general plans, but I don't know how many communities have actually gone so far as to do an evacuation assessment or route study to the degree that the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority has done. So I'm gonna follow up with Mark about some of the concerns I had about just the product that was released. Maybe there'll be some helpful links or maybe access to better maps that can help people understand evacuation. Maybe there should be a reference as an example to Genesis Protect, which is the formerly known as Zone Haven, who's now partnering with Tablet Command to provide real-time situational awareness for individuals who might find themselves in a situation where they have an evacuation warning or an actual evacuation order. So there'll be more information to follow on that. I'm sure it was just a draft report, but again, some good information, just not necessarily presented in the optimal format, in my opinion. So more to follow on that. Red Cross, this is a great story here. This past year, in last April, and then again more recently in July, we had members from the Marinwood Fire Department that went out to Marin Contempo Marin, and helped install smoke detectors with the American Red Cross volunteers. And those volunteers had actually identified that as an area that they wanted to target based on what they saw in the way of population and/or lack of resources in the way of smoke detectors and carbon dioxide detectors. Well, August 19th was the last time they went out to Contempo Marin. 2 weeks later, there was a structure fire in the middle of the night. And one of those areas that actually had been, smoke detectors had been installed in this past April was one of the areas that actually caught fire and was destroyed by the fire. But it was that smoke detector that alarmed and alerted everybody and got them out of the home. So that's a major, you know, heartwarming story in the sense of you saved life, but you lost your belongings, but at least, you know, they did what it was expected to do. And so the goals and efforts continue to try to expand the
What was
smoke
the
detector program.
Cause of that fire?
I don't have the cause, but it occurred in the middle of the night. I can certainly circle back to the staff and find out if there was any determination, because they may have actually identified an electrical short or something else. But I didn't get that detail.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I can find out. So with that, there's about 100 more homes safer in that area now, thanks to the volunteer efforts of getting out and installing those smoke detectors. Station 54. At the time of this report, there was a little more optimism based on what we believe to be the dynamics there. Unfortunately, there's still some more challenges that will probably result in several more weeks at minimum worth of delay, given some of the work that had been done, but some of the work that was done improperly and or without the proper permitting. So that's being discovered recently, and I think it's good that we're discovering it now. Otherwise, if we had occupied the space and then they discovered it afterwards, we'd have to actually relocate the members once again. But it's a big source of frustration, given this project is already 10 months behind schedule right now. So I want you guys to know that, although there was optimism, there was a new development, and given that new development, things are going to be delayed just a bit more. Not a whole lot more I can say about that right now.
Chief, I have a question on that.
Sure.
City council approves who was to build the fire station, correct?
I don't know that the city council approving so much as they ratify or agree on the vendor who's been selected to actually perform the work based on providing the most competitive bid.
So that was my question.
Okay.
Does the city have to take the lowest bidder?
I don't know that it's a requirement. I don't think it's always in the city's best interest to take the lowest bid. And I think they recognize that. I think there's actually a
Wiggle room?
a understanding based on how they present also. It could be competitive bid, but it could be other previous projects, as an example, that they've worked on. It gives the city confidence that that lowest bid will still result in what we're looking to accomplish based on their demonstrated experience and outcomes and products that they put forward. But I've seen in the past where the lowest competitive bid had to be accepted, and that was elsewhere. But I don't know that that's the reality here. And Thomas has had maybe a little more experience on this than I have, but I don't know. Are we required to actually take the lowest bid?
For a public work project over 200,000, it's the lowest qualified bid. So they have to be qualified,
But it is the lowest.
lowest qualified.
You get what you pay for.
Well, yeah, in this case, not so much.
Not so
Yeah,
much.
right. Yes, sir.
For public work, is there a surety bond associated with this, performance bond?
Sure.
So are you guys gonna pull the bond down?
I think those are matters that are stuck up in legal, so we're not privy to that.
Yeah,
that
that's-
discussion or.
The decisions gets made above our authority. Yeah,
That's the next slow road.
yeah. Salvation Army came out and provided a demonstration of their new mobile canteen to the Marin County Fire Chiefs Association at our last meeting a few weeks ago. And this mobile canteen is impressive. It's 55 years old. You wouldn't know it looking at it.
Really?
You would think that's a brand new paint job. It's actually a wrap. So they placed a wrap on it and has it, looking just as if it was, painted off the showroom floor almost. Inside there's a grill, there's a refrigerator. They have the ability to actually churn out a bunch of hot dogs and burgers. They said they can also feed a massive number of people with scrambled joes, but they can't make those on site. They have to actually bring all the materials from off site, because you can imagine all the eggs and meat and everything couldn't be stored in that one refrigerator in there. But what their goal and their hope is, we'll utilize them as a resource in the event we have a large scale training exercise, a large event of some type, and or an actual large scale incident that's going on for multiple operational periods where we can benefit from their support. So that being said, it's a new resource and they're ready to roll out. In the last couple of pages, we just have some photographs of some of the members who are recently joining the organization and some of the training evolutions they're undergoing. I've got a bunch of photos for next month that you can see regarding the girls camp. I was there this past weekend. Not too pleased about that article, I'll say that, but I'm not gonna go, much beyond that because it's not really the time to discuss it. So,
Chief, how many girls did attend?
there were 23 initially and lost 5, and so 18 finished. Yeah, but there were 55 that applied and we thought were gonna show up, but the number whittled down pretty quickly. So, but again, more on that next month.
Yeah.
So, And then last but not least, homeless encampment continues to be a concern. Um, if you look at some of the various areas, the Mahone Creek Path, the Anderson Road, I mean, they're just, these encampments are growing and they're actually getting larger and they're starting to remind me of something I've seen elsewhere that became very problematic, especially when you look at the number of wood pallets, the propane tanks, the electrical wiring that's been illegally tapped into and is throughout the encampments. And so there's an effort underway to try to reduce this risk. Genevieve wouldn't have been able to speak to it. I can't go in depth on it right now, but there is an effort in federal court to try to address this and or somehow or another find some synergy with the county on what to do about challenges like what we're seeing right now starting to develop and become a widespread issue. The ordinance spoke to trying to ensure encampments were about 200 feet spaced apart with individuals. There were arguments made that that could be very dangerous for vulnerable populations, whether they were vulnerable because of their gender or vulnerable because of their age or medical conditions. And so it's a situation that, you know, it's going to take some concerted effort. It's probably the best way I can put it, along with some legal weigh-in that may or may not be beneficial to one or both. We'll see. We'll see.
There was an article in the news last night about fire in San Francisco on
I didn't
some
see
homeless
that.
encampment street. Just they were able to put it out, so no buildings burned, but
Right.
all the vegetation burned. And so
Yeah.
what they, I think it was a front of apartments or something, so they put these planter boxes out. And so you
To
can't physically
discourage.
camp there.
Yeah.
Because now there's this planter box of flowers or something.
I've seen large scale concrete balls. I've seen the large scale planter boxes, boulders, anything that folks can put out to stop the tents on the sidewalk and or RVs parked on the streets. And it works to some degree, but then they move right across the street, in some cases where it's not, you know, that same construct. But it's a growing dilemma. And, you know, I've seen entire encampments of 30 or more tents wiped out by fire. I've seen fatalities from fire. I've seen firefighters be at risk from fecal matter and other biohazards in the encampments, whether you're talking about syringes and things of that. And so it just, it's not to say every encampment looks that way, but there's some that are, you know, actually well maintained, but quite a few of them are not. And so those are the ones I think are really the ones that get our attention because we know the risk and we know that there's some significant health risk and or fire risk there as well. So, but more to follow on that. Hopefully it'll be some good news to share about, you know, maybe finding some temporary housing and or other constructs that may be successful in other communities. I've seen limited success in some places using tough sheds and other small houses, tiny homes. But you know, land is scarce and land is a premium nowadays as well. So that kind of factors into it. Where I was at before, we were using under the freeway overpasses with the support of Caltrans. But that's not a long-term solution. I don't think Caltrans is interested in, you know, continuing to hold that responsibility or risk. We saw that just down here under the 101 as an example. So, but anyway, that concludes my report. If there's any other questions.
I have a quick question, but not related to that.
Mhm.
I saw there was a grass fire out by the Meadow Club.
Okay.
And I was just wondering if you had any comment on that, because it seemed like it was knocked down pretty quickly.
Was this about a week ago? or
Yes,
something?
we
Yeah,
there was a picture and I looked at it and I go, wow, that looks scary.
No, I think the great thing is there's a lot of attention to wildfire risk. And so when you have folks that are very proactive to reducing the surface fuels that we call them, they don't have the potential to ladder up into the brush and then from the brush into the trees and from the trees into the crowns of the trees. And so it all starts with how you're treating the ground fuel. And I think there's been a real successful effort on the part of homeowners, but also on the part of our staff here to get out and educate and enforce. We're actually now sending out letters of enforcement and citations and pre-citations, trying to ensure that people really understand and do something about the risk that they're presenting to themselves or their neighbors. So I think that may have been another example of a very proactive community member making sure that there was not too much vegetation. But I don't think it ran very far from what I understand. It was very a smaller diameter You were emailed again.
Okay, good, thank you.
Sorry. So,
Yeah, no, nothing of substance, I just remembered that, I saw it in the news.
yeah, we've been very fortunate. I'm gonna continue to knock on wood because this season, we haven't seen any real significant challenges in the North Bay, the East Bay, the South Bay. The peninsula, no areas that I've seen major incidents, and I don't know if that's because of all the rain we got this past season, or combine all of the rain with the fact that there's just a lot more resources and attention being put on trying to be more fire safe. And so with that, I'm hoping this is gonna be the new trend, not the trend we saw going back for the last several years. But we'll see.
Thank you. Any other issues, for the table?
Move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. Second, all in favor? This meeting is over at 5:16
Thank you.
PM. See you next month.